following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week. A lot of road action. A lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Welcome into another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Georgia Southern athletics, an official podcast of Georgia Southern athletics as well. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, fresh off the, I guess you can call it the Christmas break for a couple of days.
It was a longer break than we were expecting.
That's true. This time last week, we were just finding out that Georgia Southern men's basketball was on their way back from the airport in Savannah. And this is what live productions will do for you.
Yeah.
I got the text from you about 15 minutes before we were going on that, hey, we're coming home because Fordham canceled the game. Yeah. Well, we had recorded your portion about Fordham. Well, just axe all that.
If for some reason we need it, if we ever play Fordham down the line, hey, we got her in the can.
Oh, we got it in the well. We are ready to rock and roll if you need some Fordham preview.
We talked about the end of the 1920 season where Georgia Southern was up in Atlanta only to find out that COVID was going to cancel everything all across the world. So we didn't get a chance to get on a plane to go to New Orleans to the Smoothie King Center in the semifinals that year. This was different because it was so early in the season, and it's nearly 2 years later, but as we've seen with the Omicron variant, COVID continues to be part of our lives. And in Fordham's case, number one, they had announced that their next 3 non-conference games were all going to be with no fans.
Yeah.
So at that moment, you felt 50-50 at best. And then not long after that, their women's team had canceled a game that was scheduled for Monday, and they were playing Fairleigh Dickinson, a team from New Jersey, a lot more regional than Georgia Southern is, coming from Statesboro. But we never heard anything. So we load up, planning on flying from Savannah to New York direct. Almost everybody had gone through security, but they had never scanned the checked bags, which is a really good thing.
Yeah, that's...
I'm guessing about half the guys had gotten through when the communication started to intensify, and then eventually we were told, all right, we had to come back and get our bags, but we had thought because there was a different protocol for getting the bags in with another airline. It happens. But at that point, we realized that this game isn't going to happen, got everybody together, explained the situation. The team ended up meeting the next morning, and then they had another couple of days to go home, where otherwise they may have only gotten a day or two with their families.
Got a packed edition of Inside Eagle Nation this week. We're going to talk about, just about with everybody in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We catch up with Cade Carlton, the voice of women's basketball for Arkansas State, to preview Georgia Southern and Arkansas State women coming to Statesboro on Thursday evening. And then we'll talk with Matt Stolz, the voice of the Arkansas State Red Wolves. Couldn't get Ray Tucker to talk about Little Rock.
We tried.
We couldn't get penciled into his schedule, but we will talk about Arkansas State men's basketball with Matt a little bit later on this edition of Inside Eagle Nation. But before we get into too much of the stuff that I guess we're supposed to talk about.
It's our last edition of the year, so we have to fit it all in now.
It is. How was your Christmas?
Very nice. Darylyn and I got a couple of extra days to just mellow, to relax, and even though we had moved into the house about 6 months or so ago, we haven't had an instance where we've both been off for that amount of time at the same time.
Heck, you probably haven't had an edition where you were off for 12 hours at the same time.
That's a very good point. But once the season begins, I'm on the road, she's home, she's working late until I'm getting back late. It just very seldom that we're both in that house at the same time when we're not sleeping. So to be able to have a couple of days and have our first Christmas in the new house was really nice.
Nice. We just got back earlier on this afternoon from up in Atlanta. Got to see my folks for a little while. Got to go to dinner with Charlie and his wife last night. Old Charlie.
I didn't know Charlie was going to be
back.
Yeah. That's good.
When Charlie's in Woodstock. You got to go have dinner.
Charlie's great.
But we dive into Sun Belt Conference basketball. We will also talk about a couple of new hires for Georgia Southern football on the other side of the break. But it's hard to believe, and we touched on it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, it's hard to believe that Sun Belt Conference basketball is here. You're into the conference portion of the schedule. You're getting into more of a routine of that Thursday, Saturday.
Yeah.
You're either gone for a week, home for a week. It's good to get into that routine, and women will have to wait another week to get into it because they are home against Arkansas State on Thursday and then have to make the 2-day turnaround to go out to Little Rock, Arkansas on Saturday, which why that's a thing, I'm not exactly sure.
Is it because we're playing a different number of league games?
That's part of it, but I would also think because the week that you guys play Georgia State, and everybody does it with their travel partner, the week you guys play Georgia State, you play Thursday, Saturday, both against Georgia State, one here, one in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Women's basketball is doing a lot like men's and women's both did a couple of years ago, where when you play Georgia State, you only play once that week. You play both on Saturday, and you play one Saturday up in Atlanta, one Saturday in Statesboro, and that's the only game you have that week. So I would have thought that balanced it out.
Yeah.
Or I would have also thought that whether you have one more home game, one more road game, you could just balance it out the next year like you do a lot of times with baseball.
Yeah.
But apparently people that get paid a lot more than I do decided that was not the case.
I'm definitely happy that the Friday-Saturday back-to-back is gone.
Yeah.
Playing the same team 4 times is gone because we're getting to a portion now where we're either seeing a team that we haven't seen for 2 years or we're seeing somebody that we saw 3 or 4 times last year.
Yeah.
And in the case of Little Rock, it's been since January of 2020 since the last time that the Eagles and the Trojans were going to play. Remember, this was going to be the semifinal matchup in 2020 before COVID canceled everything. But in a case of a South Alabama or a Troy or an App State, saw those teams 4 times last year. So that's going to even out. You get the day in between, whether you're at home to simply chill and get ready for the next opponent, or if you're on the road, use that time to travel to your next destination. But the men will have 18 league games that begin on Thursday. And in the case of the travel, we're leaving tomorrow. So we're going to be gone for 6 days in the state of Arkansas, getting Little Rock on Thursday night and then playing Arkansas State on Saturday afternoon.
We will dive into everything for Georgia Southern men's basketball a little bit later on, but as promised, we catch up with the women's basketball voice for Arkansas State, Cade Carlton, in his first season, not necessarily first season out in Jonesboro, but first season covering Arkansas State. He's worked with EAB for a number of years and a graduate of Arkansas State, but we catch up with Cade right now. So we continue this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. We got to welcome in the voice of Arkansas State women's basketball, Cade Carlton. Cade, appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Your first year with Arkansas State as the full-time voice for women's basketball. Give us a little bit of background about you as you're the new guy in the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, I graduated from A-State, so I'd been in school for, I guess, the last 5 years or so at A-State, and so I was doing play-by-play for a high school in Jonesboro, so I was doing their football and basketball, so still doing a little high school play-by-play, still doing football and the occasional basketball game. We have a big Christmas tournament going on right now, but first year doing A-State, so excited to get conference play underway in a couple of days.
You've gone through non-conference play with this team, 7-6 on the year. Talk about what the impact Matt Daniel has had in his third year as head coach for you guys. What's the impact that he's had the last few years?
Well, we have an interim head coach right now. Matt Daniel resigned before the Mississippi Valley State game, which I guess was 3 games ago. So, we played Valley on a Tuesday night. He resigned, about 20 hours before that Monday night. So Destiny Rogers has been the interim since then. And, got a couple of pretty convincing wins over Hendricks, which is the D3 school, and then Mississippi Valley State, just, kind of like you expected. But then went on the road on Tuesday or I guess Wednesday night before Christmas and got a 3-point win at SIU Edwardsville. And so that was, that was a really good, it's never easy to win on the road. and then to get to play a team that is, I would consider a like opponent from what you're going to see in the Sun Belt Conference, and to be able to go, 4 hours on the road and get the win was big. So, I mean, they kind of went on a stretch there where they lost 3-4 games in a row. And, Matt Daniel resigned, and the Destiny Rogers, I don't know what the deal is. If it's looked like a completely different team in a good way. That's not a shot at anyone. I think Coach Daniel did a really, really good job and really like working with him. But, it's been a fun 3-game stretch these last 3 games for sure.
You look at this Arkansas State team, and you've got a number of different players scoring more than double figures. What's really been the key for this team as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, you got, you were out without Jibber Washington, who was the lone, preseason Sun Belt selection for the first, 2-3 weeks of the season. And, she's come back and, given this team just a major impact, playing off the bench. And then she got her first start at SIU Edwardsville and wound up going for 13, which was a new season high for her. You've got Trinity Jackson that's played really, really well inside, who really came on at the end of last year. And then Morgan Wallace. And so those are your 3 key returners. But, then you have Lauren Pendleton, who was named, to one of the freshman watch lists by 538 last week, who has been phenomenal. And she's averaging almost 11 points on the season. Then you have a freshman guard in Jade Upshaw, who's come on and, given the team 5 or 6 games in double digits. So it's kind of been a good blend of newcomers and, players off last year's team. And then that didn't even mention Kia Patton, who transferred in from Auburn and is averaging 13 points per game. So it's really been a good mix of players that have been here and then, some newcomers as well.
Being around this team, it was a team last year that struggled 9-12, 4-10 in conference play. I know you weren't there last year, but being around the team, what's been the biggest change trying to get Arkansas State back to what everybody in Jonesboro expects it to be?
They've gotten to a point where, the last 3 games, they've shot the ball extremely well. And that was kind of the ingredient to success early on in the season, because the first 4 or 5 games, I mean, the expectations were sky high, and then they kind of hit a wall and lost 4 straight. But, they go on the road and they put up 88 against Oklahoma. They hang with Arkansas for 3 quarters, and they've just been able to score the basketball extremely effectively. And they've kind of gotten back to that where, I think they were 3rd most field goal makes in a game in program history against Mississippi Valley State. They made 28 field goals the other night against SIU Edwardsville. So they've kind of gotten back to that, where they're shooting the ball well and moving the ball well offensively. They went back-to-back games with 20 assists in the Hendricks and Mississippi Valley State game, then had 15 against Edwardsville. So been able to move the ball extremely well. The big thing that's a difference from last year is, and this has been in most games, they got out-rebounded by 10 against Edwardsville, but most games this year, they have either won or, competed in the rebounding battle. It's not been this huge margin that they're getting out rebounded by. So that's been a definite change in the positive from what we kind of saw last year.
You talked about Kia Patton, the transfer in from Auburn. She's had a couple of different stops along her college career, but 12 points, almost 4 rebounds a game. What is it about her game and shooting the ball really well, 52% from the floor? What is it about her game that has really brought another dimension to this team?
Yeah, I mean, she has 9 games in double digits on the year, which is, just been huge to just have, you feel like you have a pretty good mix of, 4 to 5 different scorers who, at least 3 of them on a given night can get you into double digits. And we've seen multiple games this year where that number has been around 4 or 5, which, ideally is what you want in that. But she's just been really good off the ball. She's come on and played on the ball a little, but just been really good off the ball. And I don't necessarily know that they're running, a lot of sets to get her these open looks. I mean, she's just able to kind of create her shot. And, there hasn't been really one game where you kind of point and think, oh, she didn't have a really good game shooting the basketball. I mean, she's just an effective scorer and really can score it from all over. So, I mean, she's been a huge boost to this lineup this year.
Talk about the dynamic of this team, and on paper it's a little bit interesting. You've got 4 or 5 players that are averaging about 25 plus minutes a game, but it's also a team that'll go 10, 11 deep on any given night. What's the dynamic as far as what minutes look like for this team?
I think it kind of varies game to game. They wound up playing 10 at Edwardsville, but they were also without Maylin Wilkerson, who was dealing with the stomach bug, a flu bug, something. She couldn't go. So, it's kind of been in that range of 9, 10, 11, night in, night out. Now, that's 9, 10, and 11 with, a couple of players probably playing less than 5 minutes. So, when you really look at it in terms of the minutes, you probably have about a 9-person rotation when Maylin Wilkerson is healthy. 9 players probably averaging, 12, 13, 14 minutes per game, which is what it's looked like a lot this year. Now, it is nice to have, a Talia Roldan who gave you a double-double a couple of games ago as, kind of a third post player off the bench. And so I think that's a difference, too, from last year is, through the transfer portal, through, high school recruiting, through different kids deciding to come back. You built up a little bit of depth, which has been nice to have, but you can have that 9, 10-person rotation.
Take us through this non-conference schedule for your guys. Again, 7-6 on the season, but you mentioned going to Norman to play Oklahoma, got Arkansas at home, had on the road to Missouri and Southeast Missouri State, then an Oral Roberts tournament, and then a long trip out to Utah State. What does this non-conference slate really look like for Arkansas State?
It's been interesting because went on the road at Oklahoma and in the fourth quarter of play and had cut it down to single digits. I think it was a 2-possession game at one point in the fourth quarter of play, and then they wound up winning by 12 or 13 or whatever they won by. So that was a good test early on, and then Arkansas is a weird dynamic where it's not like most states where Georgia State or Georgia Southern may play Georgia every now and then, and, maybe not all the time, but at least the game has been played. That's a series that just hasn't been played. Arkansas has had this policy in place where they don't schedule A-State in the regular season. So that was the first regular season meeting between A-State and Arkansas in almost 40 years. So it was a big deal in Jonesboro. It obviously came out of the losing end, but that was interesting. And then, went on the road and played kind of a weird stretch in Tulsa where you played 2 games in about a 23-hour span and lost both of those. And then, the Utah State trip, I'd never seen anything like it in a basketball game. Utah State played with 5 players in the second half. Their entire bench got ejected at the half. There was a fight for the basketball, and then both players kind of came up heated, and the entire Utah State bench went on the floor, so they got ejected for the entire second half and wound up losing with the 3 with 10 seconds to go. So that was deflating, but. That was the last game before Destiny Rogers took over as the interim, and then we've had these last 3 games, which has been a pretty fun run.
You start Sun Belt Conference play this week, and the start of conference play this year is a little bit different. You're making the trip to Statesboro for the game on Thursday to take on Georgia Southern, but then you go back home for New Year's Day to take on Georgia State inside First National Bank Arena. It's a little bit different of a opener of Sun Belt Conference play, but I got to imagine this team's all kinds of fired up for SBC play.
Yeah, no doubt. And, like I said, I think the SIU Edwardsville game was kind of a primer for Sun Belt play because you're going on the road, you're playing a team, that again is probably going to be, on the same level as some of the teams in your league. And so, I think that was a really good win. They've been dealing with a flu bug or a stomach bug or, whatever, something's going around. And I think they finally kind of got through that. So, yeah, they're healthy. They're playing really good basketball. And I think, really excited to see what that looks like in Sun Belt Conference play for sure. Now, I wish we played at Georgia State and then played Georgia Southern at home and didn't have to make the 9.5-hour trip and then turn it back around and come home 2 days later. But it is what it is.
Well, you were telling me that you guys are sleeper busing it down to Statesboro?
Yeah, 6 a.m. departure time on Wednesday.
And you seem really excited about it.
Yeah, play 2:00. I guess y'all's time on Thursday. So,
What are you excited about most of getting into Sun Belt Conference play from you personally with your first year in the league?
well, I mean, I've been to just traveling with football and all through that. When I was in school, I've been to some of the places in the league, but like I've never been to Statesboro, so that'll be a first for me. I've never seen outside of Little Rock. I've never seen any of the basketball arenas, so all of those will be first time experiences. So that'll be cool. And then there's a couple of towns I've been in, but for the most part, I haven't really traveled within the Sun Belt. So I'm kind of excited to see what every place has to offer. So that'll be fun.
Cade, really appreciate the time. Looking forward to seeing you when you get down here to Statesboro.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you in a few days.
Once again, that's Cade Carlton, the voice of women's basketball for Arkansas State. And we continue with this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation coming up next. New blood in the Sun Belt Conference.
Was that a commercial break we just had?
Slightly.
162 episodes in, we got our first commercial break.
Oh, we've had some commercial breaks before now.
We've had a chance to meet Cade a couple of times. We've been on Kara Ritchie's show. We've been on with Bobo out at NEA.
I still say Kara needs to come down one week or one game.
Well, they finally got her to New Orleans for Media Day, so I feel like that's a building block approach.
Well, good.
Well, you were there.
I was. That's right.
We were all there at Media Day this year because we had a Media Day.
But when Kara got there, she just got cornered by Jay Walker. So
you sound surprised.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But I'm glad to see Cade's getting on play-by-play and getting you some fresh fish.
I know. On the women's side, it's very strange. There's not a whole lot of continuity with, and it's very strange because all of our friends are on the men's basketball side, and so I don't get to see any of our buddies except for Mike Hammett at ULM. That's about all I got.
Well, the first thing I get asked when we get somewhere is, where's Colin?
He's at home.
Well, he's not here, so he's got to be in Statesboro.
Had to leave me at home.
Or we're in Statesboro. Where is he? Oh, it's the Mirror, so
he's somewhere, not here.
Wherever we're not, that's where he is.
Exactly. But again, it's an Arkansas State team coming in on Thursday, a little bit earlier of a tip-off, a 2 p.m. tip-off inside Hanner Fieldhouse to get things going on Thursday.
How did you manage that?
My guess is because Arkansas State is sleeper busing it, and so they've got to get back to Jones Boogie before.
See, that does make sense.
Yeah, that I get. And especially because a lot of teams are having to travel this weekend. I imagine there's a lot of places. Louisiana won't do it, but I imagine there's a lot of places that have earlier tip times just because of the travel. Because I think everybody around the league has to go somewhere, and it's not as drastic as having to go from Statesboro to back to Jonesboro, or in Georgia Southern's case, Statesboro to Little Rock.
Yeah, the hook this year with the split is that New Year's Eve is the quote-unquote in-between day or the travel day, the buffer day. So most of the tips on January 1st should be relatively earlier. There are still a couple of schools in the league that will go 7 o'clock on Saturday nights, but I think that most people have gotten the message that, hey, if we're going to go Thursday night, let's do Saturday before 4. That way we can help, whether it's our personal travel or whether it's your travel, just to help expedite things.
So a 2 o'clock tip-off for Georgia Southern and Arkansas State inside Hanner Fieldhouse. Then women's basketball will look ahead to a Little Rock team. 2 p.m. the tip-off from the Jack Stevens Center, and potentially, probably, the last time Georgia Southern women's basketball, and you guys will hit it on Thursday.
That's right.
Last time you go to the Jack Stevens Center.
And I really like the arena. It's got that big arena-type feel. It doesn't have near the number of seats that a First National Bank Arena does in Jonesboro or a Cajun Dome does in Lafayette, but I really like the arena. It's one of those places where we sit second level, and we're almost on one of the baselines behind a basket, but we'll have the same thing in Texas, but we don't go to Texas this year. Well, I don't go to Texas this year. You go to Texas this year.
I don't go to Texas this year. Neither of us go to Texas.
You don't go to Texas this year, so it's not the true mirror schedule.
No, women's basketball could be playing the Alabamas and you're playing the Carolinas.
Okay.
There's no rhyme or reason, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but again, nobody asked me.
So neither of us are going to Texas.
No. We have Texas at home third week of this conference late.
So the following weekend, when the Eagles begin the home portion of conference play, it's Texas State on Thursday and then UT Arlington on Saturday, but we don't return that trip as part of the 18-game schedule this year. But getting back to Little Rock, it's only been within the last few weeks that they announced their intentions to join the OVC next July, and they're terming this year as their last trip around the sun, which is kind of cool when you think about it. But they've been in the league for 30 years. They've gone to 4 NITs. They've gone to an NCAA tournament where Coach Berg was an assistant on that 2015 when Chris Beard spent his only year in the conference. They went 30-5, beat Purdue in the 12-5 matchup, in which here's one that'll knock you off.
Uh-oh.
Grant Weatherford was a redshirt freshman on that Purdue team in 2015.
Good night.
That's how far back.
Not even a true freshman, a redshirt freshman.
Well, okay, he redshirted that
Okay,
year.
I gotcha.
But
is his redshirt year.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And current Mercer head coach Greg Gary was an assistant for Matt Painter at that time. And I remember watching that game live. Little Rock had to come back from a big deficit in the final 5 minutes. They end up winning the game in an extra session. But, yeah, Jack Stevens Center is one of my favorite venues to go to, different perspective because we're higher up. And it made me think about something because earlier this year we played Arkansas, football-wise, out in Fayetteville, first trip for Georgia Southern to Fayetteville. Jack Stevens had a suite.
That's right.
And we were going up the elevator. This was maybe a couple of carols down from the press box where Jack Stevens, that's got to be the same one.
I can't imagine there's too many Jack Stevens in
the state of Arkansas.
Yeah, right.
But looking forward to catching up with Ray. Maybe the final time we'll get a chance to see him. He's been involved with Little Rock basketball for close to 40 years. The last time that we were out in Little Rock, January of 2020, that weekend he was getting inducted into the Little Rock Athletics Hall of Fame.
He brought you in to get some food.
Yeah, this was an area of the Jack Stevens Center that I have never seen before, may not get a chance to see again, but Ray's been a big figure out in the state of Arkansas for a while, former director of the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame in Little Rock inside War Memorial Stadium, which we had a chance to raid 3 years ago. But it'll be great to see him, and nice to start conference play out there.
Women's basketball, as far as Little Rock is concerned, 5-5 on the year, and you can't necessarily always go off of the records for a Little Rock women's basketball team because they play some of the most gauntlet schedules you have ever seen.
Joe Foley's known for scheduling above his weight class, but most of the time they win the games.
Yeah, and so you've got wins against Vanderbilt in Nashville, a win against Memphis, win against Auburn, a lot like Georgia Southern had at the beginning of the season, then hit a little bit of a rough patch in the Oral Roberts tournament, lost both of those games against Abilene Christian and the host Oral Roberts out in Tulsa. Lost both of those, and then had to make their way to College Station, but just a 15-point loss to the number 15 team at the time in Texas A&M. Their only other loss came the last game that they played against Arkansas in Fayetteville, and lost that one pretty handily, but a really good Arkansas team that's knocking on the door of the top 25, may have actually cracked the top 25 this week, but a 73-39 loss. But that's the last game that they have played. It was December the 12th.
Wow.
And then the next time they will play, Little Rock will host Georgia State, or will face Georgia State up in Atlanta on Thursday before returning to host Georgia Southern on Saturday. But they had 3 games in that time span canceled. Supposed to play the following Thursday against Alabama at home. So you were going to be hosting an SEC opponent. That one gets canceled because of COVID concerns. And then the entirety of the Tulane Classic, where they were going to play Bradley to open it up on Monday the 20th, and then either Tulane or Texas Southern on that Tuesday. Both of those games get canceled, and all of the Tulane Classic gets canceled before you open Sunbelt play. So a very well-rested Little Rock women's basketball team.
And most of the time, this Little Rock team is the best women's team in the league. Now, Troy is caught up in recent years, and a lot of credit to what Shanda Rigby has done with the multiple appearances in the NCAA tournament. But more often than not, it's Little Rock as the top team in this league. If you want to liken it to Sunbelt women's sports, the hammerlock they have on women's basketball is like South Alabama does in women's soccer.
Yeah.
That Georgia Southern almost interrupted this year, but what South has won, was it 8 of the last 9 league championships in women's soccer?
Something like that.
We learned about that. But Little Rock is typically one of the best defensive teams in the country. Joe Foley stakes his claim on being strong defensively. They'll score just enough to beat you. And the teams that can speed them up, the rarity when it does happen, those are the teams that have success, and that's right up Georgia Southern's alley.
Yeah, Little Rock right now led in scoring by Sally Karorma, 20 points a game, shooting 22% from behind the arc, but 36% from the floor. Also 4 rebounds a game. The only other Little Rock Trojan in double figures, 10 points for Rosia Potter, coming in again just above 10 points a game. But it's a Little Rock team that has been hampered by injuries, illness the last couple of weeks, so you've got kind of a sporadic spot chart as far as Little Rock is concerned. But you're looking at that pretty much across the country now. A ton of games are starting to be impacted for something that we thought was not necessarily behind us, but in the rearview mirror. But now it's coming back with the Omicron variant as well. But you're seeing a little bit more of an impact than you thought you were going to see even 2-3 weeks ago.
You know, in terms of bowls, I think we've had 5 bowl games canceled. There was 3 in one day earlier in the week. And then with basketball, when you combine men's and women's, it's well over 200 games that have been affected, and those are going to stretch out into the next couple days and weeks. And not only are leagues having to readdress their forfeit/cancellation policy, because remember, for a while we came into this year with the understanding that if it's a conference game and you can't play it, you'd have to forfeit that. Now, non-conference, you would just say it's a wash, like what Georgia Southern men just had with Fordham. But a lot of teams are having to revisit that to say, if we can reschedule this, let's reschedule this. Let's not give a team a loss when this is surging. It may not last that long. It is contagious, but we also getting word that the CDC is reducing the quarantine for those that have tested positive. They're cutting the quarantine time in half, which should, number one, help rosters get back to somewhat full strength, and 2, it can help these leagues make better decisions in regards to if games have to be moved instead of forfeited.
Georgia Southern men's basketball also open up Sun Belt Conference play. They will be in Arkansas the entirety of the week. Again, Danny talking about it. They are leaving tomorrow to spend an extra day out in Little Rock, a former home for head coach Brian Berg.
He wasn't there long, but it was home for him.
He was there enough to scout it out.
And he was enough there to make some history.
Yeah, that was a really good Little Rock team the year he was there with Chris Beard.
This is my 7th year doing Sun Belt basketball. I still think that's the best team that this league has had.
Yeah.
That 2015 Little Rock team, they defended, they could score, they did everything well.
I mean, we'd have to go back to the Almanac Jay Walker to make sure that that was correct. But
well, you know that he would slide some. He would say 2017 Ragin' Cajuns,
no.
Which I would absolutely say that they are in the top 3, but that Little Rock team in 15 was so good, and they knew it too. It's not that they were cocky about it, but you could just tell when that team stepped on the floor, they knew they were going to beat you.
It's a Little Rock team that right now 5-7 and a little bit up and down as far as the schedule goes. Had a couple of softer opponents to open up the season, but then you get into Sam Houston State and Northern Illinois, split that weekend down in Jacksonville at a Thanksgiving tournament. They've had games against number 10 Arkansas, at Colorado State, both of those falling in those. Had a game postponed against Central Arkansas and then fell to Jacksonville State their last time out on the 21st of December. What do you know about the Little Rock Trojans, Danny Reed?
Well, 3 of the 5 wins have been against non-D1s, just like Georgia Southern. Their 2 Division I victories, ironically, are schools directionally in the state of Illinois. They beat Southern Illinois to start the year, and then they beat Northern Illinois to pick up that 5th victory. Darrell Walker, who is now in year 4 leading this program, I don't think he knows what he has, because most of his year he's had 7 healthy bodies and 7 others in tracksuits on the bench. They've been banged up, they've been sick, they've had some flu issues, and apparently this is something in the region, because you already mentioned the issues with Central Arkansas having that game get moved, actually get called off. Pine Bluff has had issues, the Little Rock women have had issues, so it's been something regionally that they have had to deal with. But if they were at full strength, I seriously think that they could threaten. And you can't say the West Division anymore, because even though last year we went East-West, to make sure that travel-wise you were only playing teams in your division. That's why Georgia Southern didn't see Little Rock last year, because they were in the West. It's now just a 12-team league, and everybody is going to go to the conference tournament down in Pensacola once we get to the month of March. They're led by Nikola Marich, who had some issues with his amateur status a couple of years ago, didn't play the first half of the season, but as a freshman, really good game at Hanner Fieldhouse. He actually had 18 and 8 that night. He's now coming back after starting for his second straight year. Good size at 6'10", 250, preseason third-team all-league pick. He's averaging 13 and 6. Those rebounding statistics are ninth best in the league. He can also step out and knock down the three-point shot, but their offense is going to go through him. You also look at somebody like an Isaiah Palermo, 6'5" junior from Kissimmee, Florida, an afterthought for his first 3 years, but now he's averaging better than 12 points per game, and he's had to step forward because they've had so many guys out.
That'll be the opener for Sun Belt Conference play for Georgia Southern men's basketball. 7:30 the tip-off from Little Rock, Arkansas, and the last time out to the Jack Stevens Center in Little Rock. We'll be on the air at 7 o'clock with the Cutwater Spears countdown to tip-off, and then you transition over to Jonesboro, Arkansas, and the Arkansas State Red Wolves. And
New Year's at Jonesboro!
We welcome in the voice of the Arkansas State Red Wolves, and Matt Stolz. Matt, appreciate you joining us.
Well, you guys lucked out getting to spend New Year's in Jonesboro, didn't you?
Well, I'm hoping that you and I can sing Auld Lang Syne at some point on Saturday. Can we do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait. It's good to have two of my favorite guys in the league coming to Jonesboro. So I'm excited about it. Actually, I know I say two of them. You're coming, Danny. I'm sorry Colin has to miss out on this trip, but only so many can experience New Year's in Jonesboro.
We don't want to take it from everybody else that's going to be there.
Talk about this team, Matt. Off to a 9-3 start through non-conference slate before you get into what the Sun Belt Conference looks like coming up on Thursday when you guys open up against Georgia State. But so far, what has this team been about?
9-3 is a good place for this team to be right now. The three losses have been against really good teams. They've lost at Illinois, at Texas Tech, and they had a home loss against Morehead State. But just overall, I think the body of work is good right now. And really, you go back over the last 2.5 games, they're playing their best basketball right now. And it seems to really be starting to come together. Norshad Omier comes in as the preseason Sun Belt Player of the Year. And, he's averaging a double-double and looking kind of the way he looked at the end of last season. And, it's basically the same team you saw last year. Almost everybody is back. 98% of last year's scoring has returned, but they've added a really good transfer in Desi Sills, who transferred in from Arkansas. He's a Jonesboro product, went to Jonesboro High School, actually played on the same high school team as Marquis Seton. So Desi's been a great addition. He's already come in, and even with a team full of returners, he's a guy that has become a team leader in a very big hurry. So I like where this team's at right now, and should be fun to watch.
I want to go back to Omier for a second. I want to say it was after the game against Lyon when he had 31 points that Coach Bellotto was asked about how he has gotten better from a season that he averaged 12 and 12 as a freshman. From your chair, in what ways has he gotten even better to back up being the preseason Player of the Year?
Just comprehension of the game. And you go back and look at Norshad. He's only been playing basketball about 4 years now, and he's still learning the game. And the biggest thing with him, and it's no secret, it's happened last year and it's happened again to begin this season. When Norshad gets in trouble, it's because of fouls.
Yeah.
And he picks up way too many times for his liking, and I know Coach Bellotto's liking to this point. A couple of fouls in the first 3, 4, 5 minutes of the game, and there's been several instances where he has to sit the rest of the first half. So foul trouble has been the biggest issue right now for Norshad. And you mentioned the 31 and 10 that he had last time out. That was in 21 minutes. It's not like he's out there playing 30, 35 minutes a game, and he's in as good a shape as any athlete you'll come across. So he's a guy that can play an entire 40 minutes if need be, but at the same time, it's just being able to be on the floor and staying out of foul trouble that's the biggest issue with him. But I think he's understanding the game better. He's certainly enjoying the process of just being a part of this team. And I think that the sky's the limit for him. And again, we kind of saw at the end of last year just a little glimpse of how good he might be. And now I think he's starting to show improvement.
This is an Arkansas team that last year 7-8 in Sun Belt play. Where's the biggest improvement that you see from this team as a whole?
Just another year older. I think that Norshad is one example. His maturation continues, but they're better because they've added Desi Sills. And Desi is a all-conference caliber player. He was all-conference caliber in the SEC. And he's come in, and again, he's already assumed a leadership role. And, he's averaging 15, 16 points a game, and he's just going to continue. I think he's going to continue to get it done on that end of the floor. But where his value really lies is on the defensive end of the floor. He is a fantastic defender, and he was that way when he was at Arkansas. Where they really didn't use him as much was on the offensive end of the floor. And I think that he wanted to become more valued and more used offensively. And so far at A-State, that certainly happened.
One thing that sticks out about the schedule is the fact that Coach Bellato not only scheduled 2 SWAC teams, but going to SWAC teams like a Pine Bluff, like a Mississippi Valley State. These are schools that typically don't get Division I home games in the non-conference. How did that all go down?
Well, we needed some home and homes, and it worked out to where we were on the road for those SWAC opponents, and that happened here in just the last few weeks. But I think for this team in particular, it's important to go into some different environments and play those road games. They've played most of their games to this point at home, but at the same time, I think it was good for them to go on the road. That was part of a 3-game road stretch where they did win those games at Pine Bluff and then at Mississippi Valley. And then, they wrapped up that road swing by going to Texas Tech and probably played their best half of the season in the second half of that game in Lubbock. So I think that now they have some road experience. They know they can win on the road. And, hopefully that's something that pays dividends come conference play.
Coach Bellato has hovered around 500 for a good portion of the tenure, but I remember then when we talked in the tournament last year because we matched up in that first-round game in Pensacola that this was going to be the year that probably was one of the most anticipated in recent memory, and now that you have so many guys back, adding Desi, how has that anticipation met what has actually happened?
I think that we're starting to see what this team can be, but I don't think they're anywhere close to where they want to be right now. I think that 9-3 is all well and good, but at the same time, there's a lot of ways this team can improve. You go back over the last few years, and you're right. I think everything in this program has been leading up to this year, and a lot of these guys will be back next season and the year after that. But at the same time, one piece that we haven't talked about yet is Marquis Seton. Yeah. And here's a guy that's 7th on the all-time scoring list now at A-State. He's top 10 in steals, top 10 in assists, and he is a very big piece of this team. Well, this is his last year. He's a COVID senior, and he's trying to make the most of it as well. So, yes, you've got some key pieces in place, but this is your last time around with Marquis Seton, and this is the year that they've kind of been building toward.
This is the 5th year under Bellato at Arkansas State, and I know whenever he came into Jonesboro was somebody that was welcomed pretty well. What has it been like the last 5 years seeing him build his program?
I think he's done a good job. I know it hasn't gone as fast as he wanted to, but I think what we saw in the second half of conference play last year, there was a 4-game win streak during that stretch. There were some close losses. They did win the game against Georgia Southern in the conference tournament, but I think that they were able to take a little bit of confidence and build on some things from that last month of the season last year. So, again, it's not as fast as Coach Bellato would have liked, but he really, really likes this team that he has in place right now.
Where are you going to make Matt take you for New Year's?
Oh, Matt, what is open on New Year's?
Well, I know you're a big pizza lover, and you visited most of the pizza joints around town, but I'm happy to take you out for New Year's. So we'll make sure you have a good time while you're here.
Okay, we've been to the 3 major ones. Has there been one that we have missed? Is there a hidden gem in Jonesboro that we have somehow missed?
There's plenty of places you haven't been to yet, Danny. This place is growing like crazy around here. They build a new restaurant every week. So, yeah, that's something we're not short of in Jonesboro. So we're happy to have you here, and hopefully we'll have some fun this weekend.
Hey, before we let you go, I wanted to get your take on what the kind of crowd has been like so far. You talked about a lot of home games for this team so far. Last year being a COVID year, reduced capacity and everything that you had to go through last year, what is the crowd and kind of getting back to the new normal? What has that been like this year for this team?
I'm really anxious. We had a good crowd at the very beginning of the season. A lot of the students were there. In fact, our entire end zone was full with our student section. I'm anxious to see, and this is usually when the crowds pick up. Once school gets back in the spring, the students get back, that can be a different kind of atmosphere. And because of the success of this team and because of the potential that this team has, I think that we could start to see some much bigger crowds. I don't know if we're going to see that this week with the students still not back just yet, but there's a lot of things to be excited about, and not just because of the 9-3 start, not just because conference play is here, but because there are 3 players on this A-State roster that are from the city of Jonesboro. There's a lot of local interest here in Northeast Arkansas. I mentioned Desi Sills and Marquis Seton played on the same high school team at Jonesboro High School, but Avery Phelps is also a Jonesboro product, and he is a very valuable contributor off the bench, and he went to high school in Jonesboro as well. So there's a lot of reasons for the crowd to come out. They've got every reason in the world, especially if this team continues to win games, and hopefully we see some big crowds soon at First National Bank Arena.
Matt, appreciate you joining us. Hope you guys had a really Merry Christmas, and Daniel will catch up with you in a couple of days.
All right, looking forward to it. We'll miss seeing you, Colin, but I'll make sure I take care of Danny for you. And always fun talking to you guys.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, love you guys. See ya.
Once again, that's Matt Stolz, the voice of the Arkansas State Red Wolves, one of the best guys in the league. There's no doubt about it.
Becoming the venerable Matt Stolz.
He is.
He's almost up to Jay Walker in terms of years at his school.
Unless you ask Jay. It's going to be a good weekend for you. Get to see 2 of the really good guys. Well, one of the really good guys in Matt Stolz. I'm still trying to figure out if Ray Tucker exists.
Well, he's like Santa Claus. He is very real.
He really is.
But he is very real. Or Shoeless Joe Jackson, if you like Field of Dreams, whichever.
I have never met Ray Tucker. I don't know that I've ever seen Ray Tucker.
I know you didn't get a chance to go to Pensacola last year, but...
See, I'm starting to think all of y'all are getting together and just making it a myth and coming up with different stories.
The good thing is that this year, all 12 on both sides go to Pensacola.
And they all play at the Base Center.
All play at the Base Center. So, at some point, there has got to be an overlap. We got to get... It took Sowers, I think, 3 or 4 years to meet
I
Ray.
think it did too, and he became a best friend for life.
Oh, he's got him a bestie. We need to get Sowers on to tell some Ray Tucker stories.
We should have had Josh on to talk about Ray Tucker instead of...
Oh, so next week, what are we going to do? Because I'll have Texas State and Arlington here. And Arlington, it's going to be their final year in the league.
Good point.
Because they haven't announced where they're going yet. It's coming. They haven't announced it yet, but this is going to be their last year in the Sun Belt.
Sad. And next week, I've got Coastal Carolina and App on the road. That's tough.
I'd say we could do one of each.
Or all of them.
That's fine, too.
Because I'm not sure
And we don't have a time limit.
That's true. We could go for days.
We just stopped.
almost
We
did
run
last
out of
week.
things. Yeah, but there was a reason for that.
That's true. But Georgia Southern men's basketball will be in Jonesboro on Saturday, 5 p.m. The tip-off from First National Bank Arena. They will start Sunbelt Conference play on Thursday out at the Jack Stevens Center in Little Rock, Arkansas. 7:30 the tip-off. Danny will be on the air with the Cutwater Spirits countdown to tip-off 30 minutes prior in both of those.
So it's 7 Eastern on Thursday for the Cutwater countdown to tip-off, and then Saturday it'll be 4:30.
Correct.
Different tip times this weekend.
It'll be all right.
Well, yeah.
I'll get you through it.
Will I have you?
No.
Oh.
I'll be there in spirit. Maybe.
Thank you.
Maybe. Before we wrap up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation, got a couple of new hires over at the Ted Smith Family Football Operations Building to get to you.
If this is basketball, we got a starting 5 now.
Yeah, we do. And we've got the 5 to come in.
Yeah.
All 10 coaches, on-field coaches, have now been hired for head coach Clay Helton. We'll start on the defensive side since that what was kind of bringing up the rear. Will Harris has been named the defensive coordinator and secondaries coach, has been the DB's coach out at Washington the last 4 years, and a really, really good pass defense out at Washington in his tenure. Spent 2 years as the DB's coach at San Jose State. Went to 5 bowl games in his playing career at USC as a DB. Also spent time with the Seattle Seahawks in their training camp, as well as the Edmonton Eskimos with the CFL. I know that'll perk Ryan Chambers up.
Oh, without a doubt. I'm sure he's watching this.
Eventually.
The thing about Washington's pass defense, not only was it one of the best, it was the best.
Yeah.
Fewest passing yards allowed. They only gave up 6 passing touchdowns all year. They've been known for the last 4 or 5 years as one of the best units in the country of giving up plays of 40 yards or more. This is a chance for Harris to show out, and I think Eagle Nation is really going to enjoy the amount of energy he puts into his defense. This is going to be a really good thing.
Also named the remainder of his staff on the defensive side. Rip Rowan, the defensive line coach, has been the D-line coach or a D-line analyst for the last 2 years at Washington. A Marietta native, so he's got ties to the Georgia area. Was a GA at FAU, a GA at Southern Miss. It's somebody that, again, just fits into the footprint, but has also done it and seen it at the highest level of college football.
And he sounds like he's a D-line coach.
Oh, no doubt.
Especially when his name is one of the moves that a D-lineman uses.
Right. Maybe he patented it. Maybe.
If he did, we can't let him get away then.
Also got the linebackers coach and Aaron Schwanz. Defensive analyst at Washington last year. He was an analyst from 2018 to 2020 at LSU under Dave Aranda, who is now the head coach at Baylor, but was part of that magical national championship run for the LSU Fighting Tigers. He's been a GA at Washington, has background in special teams as well, so can have his hands in a couple of different areas. This is one that I really like.
Even though Turner West is the dedicated special teams coordinator, having another set of hands and another perspective to lend, and somebody that was part of a national championship program 2 years ago, I'll take it.
It's kind of interesting. We talked about it when Turner West was hired. He has kind of ties into the linebacker core, and so you've got 2 linebacker guys that are also special teams guys. Yeah. I think that's going to roll really well. On the offensive side for Georgia Southern football as well, Richard Owens just named the offensive line coach and run game coordinator. The last 3 years, the O-line coach at UAB, a former NFL tight end, spent 5 years with the Rams, the Jets, the Vikings, was the tight ends coach at South Alabama, so he knows the Sun Belt Conference, also coached O-line there, and was also the offensive coordinator at UAB for a time, and so he has seen it from a couple of different facets. Going to be the O-line coach and run game coordinator, which we haven't really dove into a whole heck of a lot. You've got Brian Ellis, the offensive coordinator, over everything on the offensive side.
That's your play caller.
Then you've got the pass game coordinator, and Ryan Applin is going to be the tight ends and inside receivers, and then Richard Owens is going to be the run game coordinator. So it's almost like a VP for the offensive coordinator.
It's the who do I report to kind of deal with each individual part of the offense.
So Richard Owens, the new O-line coach and run game coordinator, and just come out in the, last couple hours. Marcus Davis, the wide receivers coach, was a wide receivers coach at Hawaii for a year, a 4-year receiver at Auburn, has had stops at Auburn for player development and offensive analyst, was also the wide receivers coach at Florida State as well.
So that would mean at the moment that the staff is filled, and if there are any changes, those will certainly be reported over the next coming days and weeks. And outside of maybe some support staff we would hear about leading towards spring ball, the next big checkpoint is when cleats and shoulder pads go on and you get your first look at what this program is going to look like when 22 rolls around.
It still blows my mind, and a lot of it, again, goes back to what Coach Helton has talked about ever since he got to Statesboro, that he was using borrowed time. But the fact that you are sitting here December 27th, you have your entire on-field staff already assembled, in a good portion of your off-field staff, support staff, that's huge. Because then you go now fully into the recruiting mode, fully into the off-season mode of you don't have to worry about your staff. And again, there are some changes that could happen over the next couple weeks, but it's going to be few and far between. That's not your major focus right now.
The transfer portal is going to pick up. We know that once the season ends. We also know that the February signing period is still out there. Georgia Southern picking up 20 guys in the early period not very long ago, so there's a chance that a couple of more could get signed. And remember, you've got that 7-person waiver in regards to COVID, where if you happen to lose guys because of the transfer portal, you can get up to 32 signed in an individual year. You've still got the transfer portal, and you're going to figure out exactly what the makeup of next year's team is going to look like relative to not necessarily what offense is going to look like, what defense is going to look like, but simply what personnel you're going to have to fill all those spots.
So again, the entirety of the on-field staff is complete for Georgia Southern football. Clay Helton, the entire staff looks like this, with Brian Ellis as the offensive coordinator, Ryan Applin, the pass game coordinator, tight ends coach, and inside receivers. Richard Owens will handle the offensive line and run game coordinator. Marcus Davis, the wide receivers coach. Ephraim Reed, right now, the running backs coach. Will Harris, the defensive coordinator. He will handle the secondary. You've got Rip Rowan, still one of the best names ever, on the defensive line. Aaron Schwanz, the linebackers coach. Kevin Whitley, the assistant head coach, and will handle the cornerbacks. And then Turner West as the special teams coordinator. That is your on-field coaching staff for Georgia Southern football.
And I think we mentioned this within the last couple of shows. This is the first true staff overhaul that we've had since 2016, where there's a lot of new guys, there's a lot of new faces that we're going to have to get in front of, a lot of hands that we're going to have to shake. But by the time that next football season rolls around, and by the way, that's going to be pretty close to our 200th episode.
Ooh.
Give or take. It might be a little off, but
we can make it. We can do 2 episodes in a week.
We're going to be nearing our 200th episode. Our hope is that once the staff is fully in place, we'll be able to use this platform to talk with many of our assistants. We'll get involved with sports information as well, and that way, Eagle Nation, you can get to know them as we get to know them.
So we're going to have a lot of guests coming up in the next couple weeks, really in the next 2020 calendar year. Going to try to start it off next week with the first edition of 2022.
What a ride 21 was.
We're going to have a lot of fun guests over the next couple of weeks, and hope you will join us on every edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Again, to make sure not only to watch the live here on the Georgia Southern Sports Network Facebook Live, but also catch us on the podcasting platform, however you get your podcast, whether it's iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Amazon Music has just come on in the last couple of months.
That's right.
Any way you get your podcast, go ahead and subscribe, drop a like, drop a follow, whatever the podcast button is.
And make sure to follow the YouTube channel, Georgia Southern Sports Network.
Yep. All of that will be uploaded on there as well. And also, as we go from 21 to 22...
We need to play... Let me get Auld Lang Syne real quick. No.
No. I'm not calling a Christmas store here. But let us know what you would like to see in the coming year, whether it's basketball, baseball, when we get into football over the summer. If there's something you would like to see, like to hear, like to know more of, you can always comment whenever we go live, but also make sure to send us what you would like to hear, who you would like to hear from, who would you like to hear about, anything you would like. Let us know. I'm not guaranteeing that we can do everything, because I know the imagination of some of Eagle Nation, but if it's possible, we will make it happen.
2022, the year of Eagle Nation.
Wow. Look at that. That might turn into a shirt, too.
That's for free. Until it becomes a shirt. Then I want royalties.
Then it's $12.99.
It's $12.99. Well,
something like that.
Maybe $19.
Man, you are expensive.
$12.99. Come on.
For a shirt?
You seen some of what shirts are going for now?
Yeah, but my goodness. You're expensive. Guess that's what happens when you're the voice.
Oh.
That'll wrap up this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Appreciate everybody tuning in this week, either on the live version on Facebook Live or however you get your podcasting platforms. Until next week, for the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.